Welcome to the Bible Forum. It is November 11, 2018. I'm Warren Sprouse. I want to talk to you about the way you define civilization. We saw this week this story. It starts out, a gunman walks into a bar. It's a very familiar story these days. But the question is, what's going on? Ian Long is 29 years old. He opens fire at the Borderline Bar and Grill in Thousand Oaks, Southern California at about 11:30 p.m. He's dressed in all black. He fired at least 30 shots from a pistol that he had reconfigured with an extended magazine. Witnesses said Long also let off smoke grenades to confuse the terrified crowds. The weapon was legally purchased in Ventura County, but Long modified it. That makes it illegal. There were about 100 people in the bar, including some who were under 21, some who were there just simply to dance. The college country night is what they called it. It's a regular fixture. Youngsters come from nearby colleges. They can go in there. If they're underage, they get a stamp saying that they can't drink. It goes on the back of their hands. Maybe they get the stamp that says they just won't drink. But some of those inside were students of Pepperdine University. Others are thought to have gone to California Lutheran University. Both of these are Christian schools. And it begs the question, what were Christian kids doing in a bar? I know, it's 2018. This is going on all the time. The old standards are going out the window. I understand that. But there was a reason why Christians didn't do this in the past. We don't care about that anymore. He is considered an ex-Marine, not a former Marine, and if you're in a Marine family, you understand what that means. A former Marine is a Marine that served with honor and was discharged. An ex-Marine says that he used to wear the uniform, but he weren't never a Marine. A man with a mental and or emotional problem, maybe several. A man who fitted right in with our 21st century culture, at least almost. The records show that back in April, police and mental health specialists were called to his home in regard to a disturbance. What they did, said, how they evaluated him, what techniques they used, what they saw, we don't know. But after their investigation, they cleared him instead of having him committed. It's also unclear if he bought the .45 caliber handgun after that incident or he already owned it. You see, he killed himself after killing 11 people inside the bar, along with a sheriff's deputy who had responded to the scene. So the question becomes, what does it take to kill another human being in cold blood? What does it take to simply start shooting in a crowded room? What does it take to kill yourself? The answers to all these questions should be, it takes a great deal. But today it's becoming commonplace. A man who was judged sane just 6 months ago, judged safe just 6 months ago, safe for society. How many times have mental health experts come to your home in order to evaluate your mental stability? In this man's case, the police thought he was deranged. The mental health experts disagreed? Perhaps. But more likely, he did not fully qualify as a person who deserved being deprived of his constitutional rights, being forcibly admitted to a mental institution, even for evaluation. I suggest to you that you can look for that to be changed. That standard is about to be altered because it's always better to be safe than sorry. My question then becomes, who is it that will be judged sane in the future? Who is it that will be judged unsafe, and by what standard? Civilization is defined as an advanced state of intellectual, cultural, and material development in human society, marked by progress in the arts and science, marked by the extensive use of record keeping, including writing, and the appearance of complex political and social institutions. The type of culture and society developed by a particular nation or region or in a particular epoch. For example, the Mayan civilization, the civilization of ancient Rome could be added in there. Cultural or intellectual refinement, good taste. These are the definitions given to us by the American Heritage Dictionary. Merriam-Webster's dictionary says the culture characteristic of a particular time or place, a relatively high level of cultural or technological development. This is what we call sophisticated. This is what we call civilized. But think about that group of protesters outside Tucker Carlson's house last week in Washington, D.C. That crowd that didn't seem to care about him, his wife, his family, or his property, mashed into the door, broke the door, frightened the poor woman to death, threatened him with all sorts of things because of what? Because of words that he said. They called themselves an anti-fascist group, which means they thought Tucker Carlson was a fascist. They posted a video of their members screaming obscenities at Carlson's house, blaming his policies for the deaths of thousands of people. Tucker's policies. He doesn't make policy. He's a commentator. He has an opinion. They threatened him. They threatened his family. Did any of them go to jail? Are any of them deprived of any form of their rights at this point for this, what in any other time would be a crime? I don't really think so. Considering the tremendous increase in violence, sexual deviation, the ritual murder of unborn children, civilization as we know it in the world seems to be in decline. Or maybe it's just being redefined. Mass murder is fast becoming a staple of the news. Behind that are the vicious abductions and or enslavements of otherwise innocent human beings for fun or profit. The father who recently killed his wife and children reported to the police their abduction with a straight face until they found the bodies. The more common expressions would be societies living out of touch with 21st century civilization. We think of tribes isolated by geography, perhaps. Their ways are primitive and largely pagan, meaning they have no understanding of the God of the Bible, the one true God of heaven, or the values that come with him. The God who sent his only begotten Son to earth in order to pay the price of sin for an entire species. That they are pagan means they either never have heard of this God or their forebears have so rejected this God that his name and standards are long ago lost to their culture. Of course, the latter is far more likely since all human beings spring from a common ancestry. Forebears that knew intimately the God of the Bible. I'm talking about Noah and his sons. Forebears of all who now inhabit this earth. Forebears who knew the standards, knew the requirements. Forebears who deliberately rejected that knowledge and have condemned their families, their entire societies to suffer the results of that rejection. For thousands of years, the definition of primitive and civilized have revolved around the knowledge and acceptance of God. Today, that ancient and established definition has been thrown out. Today, a myriad of human beings embrace the idea of a God who requires the degradation of women, the mutilation of women, the subjugation of women. A religion whose God dominates his subjects with an unyielding law of behaviors and religious practices. Followers who are encouraged to live as the 6th century prophet lived, the one that they revere, and to kill any and all human beings who deliberately refuse to believe as they. In the so-called civilized world, even Western civilization, civilizations are colored and characterized by the gospel. That's the definition of Western civilization. A culture now that seems intent on rejecting God. Even in churches on Sunday mornings, we can find everything from pagan ritual to overt godlessness coming right from the pulpits. The whole idea of Christian worship being twisted. The point of going to church has been lost, and the message being communicated is more human than it is divine. Even as God words are used and prayers are being offered. Politics, which has been a blood sport for millennia, is fast becoming paganized, as people are intent on getting what they want regardless of the methods. They will lie, they will cheat, they will steal. They will practice overt physical intimidation up to and including violence, and consider these the tools of the trade. I would suggest that they are the tools of godless politicians. Men and women working for nothing more than the power, then using that power to alter the rule of law in favor of what they view as more humane and or fair treatment of people. Ignoring the reality that fairness is the enemy of justice. And in this error, they seek to set our culture on a downward trajectory, even as they enrich themselves with power and or wealth. This is what we are watching as another election cycle is being tainted by immoral men and women with the goal of stealing it away from the candidate with the most votes in order to give it to their candidate. A common story. An increasingly common story. An increasingly downward social spiral. And we haven't even talked about the violence. The violence stimulated by powerful people who have the money to hire people to harass their political and or moral enemies in the streets. The violence of herding thousands of unsuspecting, desperate people toward our southern border for their own purposes and personal gain, knowing many of these people will suffer and some will die due to their greed, not caring about these people, caring only for their own political power and purpose. And all of us, in all sections of that spectrum, consider ourselves civilized. We've come a long way.